me try this one more time. So I'm being told that we are preparing to stream. So you should see at the top of your screen now a little button that says live on YouTube. So sorry, we had hoped to do that a little bit beforehand. But the reason why we are showing this on YouTube is just to give the public an opportunity to comment, and we will be monitoring comments and trying to, so if anybody, if you're out there watching and you have ideas that we should be funding in the City of Worcester infrastructure projects, please feel free to comment. We will be monitoring this as we go along. So as I was sharing before, though, we have specific criteria where we can request funds from the federal government for CDBG. And a lot of times, again, this will be business creation projects or downtown improvement projects. This is a good example on the screen right now of specific programs that we can utilize. We do receive, we're fortunate in Worcester that we receive an allocation program, and there's one for Greater Wayne County as well, where we can do infrastructure projects to benefit the quality of life to low to moderate income persons. This year, uniquely, we can dedicate all of those funds to public services that benefit low to moderate income individuals. And so we have two proposals on how to utilize this funding for this year that we'll talk more about at our public hearing, but specifically we're looking at $100,000 contribution to establishing, to help support the creation of the Salvation Army's The Living Room Day Center project, and then another $50,000 to support the Viola Startzman Clinic, who has been a mainstay provider of free medical care to the uninsured or underinsured individuals in our community. The next part is just something that's of interest that I think for all of us here, I mean, basically working with development in the city and county as a whole. CDBG does have competitive grants that are available. Again, these are usually focused on infrastructure, but they can be utilized for things such as, in addition to roads and highways, they can go towards parks. Sometimes they can go toward community spaces, and that would be serving the greater public. And they categorize this down into three different programs, really. Neighborhood revitalization would require a comprehensive plan. That would be something that we could, if we identified a specific area, like let's say within downtown or one of our adjoining neighborhoods there, and developed a comprehensive plan for needs that were necessary there, we could utilize that to help secure up to $300,000 in federal funds to help with those projects. And that could be things like bus stations, playgrounds, other rest areas that might serve the public. Sidewalks are a big deal of I should say sidewalks have taken a sizable contribution of what we've utilized CDBG for in the past, and that remains to be an issue. And then these economic development grants are also a tool that can be utilized to help businesses directly, as well as the downtown revitalization grant. We can make funding available to certain businesses if they are creating jobs or rehabilitating a historic building. Usually there's a 50% match, and similarly we have a Targets of Opportunity grant. So you can see the values here. They can be a nice injection into a project. The only thing that comes with this are a couple of strings, which is any project, especially if it's for a private project, needs to be utilizing prevailing wage, and that typically will add anywhere from 14 to 20% onto the project cost. So at a certain, depending on how expensive the project is, that can be that can make the grant less advantageous. But it is a tool that can be helpful and has been utilized in a lot of our downtown buildings. And so it's something we just want to make sure that folks are aware that we could utilize in the future for that. And then with economic development, just for job creation, and again, this would apply countywide. But when a business would commit to hiring individuals who are low to moderate income, which is generally less than 1 year's of work experience, nothing more significant in training than a high school diploma, CDBG will allow generally anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 of funding to be applied toward a project. It can be made available to the business in the form of a loan directly, or it can be made available to a government to help provide public infrastructure to support that project, whether that be a roadway improvement or traffic signals or other type of work that we need to do. So that's basically what we're talking about in a nutshell with how of this grant opportunity that we've had available with us for several years. What we're trying to do today is work through a list of ideas and needs that our community needs that we might want to focus our efforts on for future grant development. So I'm going to show one additional list here and just kind of walk through what we have at the moment. And I wanted to get your feedback on what we might want to add to this list, what we could possibly take away. So I'll share this with you, and I'll just open it up for discussion. And whoever wants to weigh in, please do. I'm going to go back to sharing my first screen here, and oops. My apologies. This is our list. We have on here, our needs are really what we're taking a look at. We've talked before about needing additional funding for bus shelters, trying to focus on downtown recreation. Specifically, there's an idea to establish a volleyball court in downtown, along with a in addition to that, that could double as an ice rink during the summer. And additionally, going forward, we have plans to help expand trails through downtown and reaching the OSU campus. We have a TCI Brownfield site, which is in downtown. Former Horn Nursing Home site, this is probably something we can take off of our list, fortunately, as it's moving forward. With the Ray and Associates expansion. But some other things that could be opportunities in the future. We've talked about the Downing Block building in the past and the Quinby building. So those are things that we can leave on there for possible opportunities for rehabilitation. There's also a need for additional transit and educational outreach. We talked a lot last year about supportive housing and 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. We've been very fortunate with Tanya Sargent at Wayne Metropolitan Housing Authority helping us to secure the CHIP program for this coming year. So that has been very successful. And then globally, we're taking a look at needs for sidewalks and expansion of sidewalks and improvements of them throughout the city. That's specifically from our Worcester City School District partners who see that a lot of their students do rely on that. And an interesting fun fact, about 8% of the population in Worcester who's commuting to work every single day is doing so either on foot or bicycle. So a good number of our citizens rely on that infrastructure as well. And then also broadband expansion. Not all areas of the city have easy access to broadband. Most do, but it's a difficulty, especially in the educational setting. So this is our list, and I wanted to open it up for conversation. What do we think about this, and what should we add to it? Shannon, would you be willing to go first with your eye toward Main Street?
Well, I certainly would be delighted to see any investment in the restoration of historic buildings. So those piqued my interest right away. I'm curious as to how many new jobs make it a viable grant application when you're talking about hiring those people with minimal experience or a certain level of education?
So the way that the state has advised us in the past is that there are generally two measures, up to $10,000 per job of incentive can typically be provided in grant form. I believe up to 25,000 can be made available in the form of a loan that would be fully repaid, and that would be per low to moderate income job that would be created. So for a two-person business, that would limit it to, say, if it's an infrastructure grant, to it would have to be $20,000 or less. If you're hiring 50 or 60 low to moderate income people, then you can multiply accordingly. Of course, they do try to max out normally after $600,000, at least working with the state. They do tend not to go beyond that, but there are other grants that we can also reach out to, like the we can reach out to EDA. The only issue with that is that has a long lead time. CDBG has a bit of a long lead time too, where it can take at least 6 to 8 months to apply for a grant and know if you're actually going to get it. But so these are for sometimes longer term projects. But that being said, it is a good opportunity for someone who is looking at a major project where there might be some long-term planning associated with that. But Shannon, I'm just going to leave on to our list here. It'll be a little bit more vague, but keep open the possibility that we don't necessarily know what the next building rehabilitation project might be. So it's okay to have some of these as vague explanations at this stage, I think, is part of a planning strategy. So I'm going to leave that as opportunities for rehabilitation of older buildings. And we can use that as a catch-all for when we do identify something. Similarly, repaving, want to mention that because our downtown area in particular is our oldest area of the city. And while we've been catching up on a lot of our infrastructure, we do have some of the more frequent challenges that we run into, and the more expensive challenges we run into are downtown, where we have a lot of utilities and it's a more constrained environment and much older infrastructure to deal with. So repaving would be an opportunity that we'd probably rely on, like an allocation grant to help with. So I'll just put that in here as well.
A quick question. A quick question,
yes,
Jonathan. So when you are talking about the projects and getting ideas, realistically, what is a time frame for when will you apply for this? Is this an every other thing, or based on the list that you have, when would be the most recent application or the application coming up?
So I hate this answer, but it depends on the project. So for projects where we might be tackling business efforts where there's job creation, or even like a downtown building rehabilitation, like for instance, we utilize these funds for 149 North Walnut Street, and also the Taggart building. That would be something where it's almost an open cycle. The state has about 3 specific dates where applications can be officially submitted. So I would say the timer on that would really be, I would advise allow six months or so for a project like that. When it's specifically job creation, that can be a more open cycle. And I think that we can generally get a good feel from the state on if something's moving in a positive direction within a couple of months, but it still will take, I would say, from start to finish, from starting the application, hey, we know the project, we have all the details, we're applying to the state. Depending on what might be required for an environmental review. It could take anywhere from as short as, I would say, 2 to 3 months on the extremely short end to probably a more realistic 6 to 8 months for that as well.
Okay.
Some of the public infrastructure projects, like the streets, things that might be directly related to the city doing work or construction, like bus shelters, that will generally be a once-a-year application. The opportunity comes up. It starts a little before this time every year, with applications typically due toward the beginning of June or the middle of June. And then it'll be, that being said, so for this year, we mentioned at our public hearing, we'll be recommending $100,000 for the Salvation Army's The Living Room, the Day Center project, and then another $50,000 to Viola Startzman Clinic. So that we will need to apply for by June 19th. That'll be our deadline. But as we come around to January and February of next year, we'll already be working on the next round for the upcoming applications. And right now, allocation, some of these grants, like the allocation program, they are on a biannual cycle, so it's every 2 years for us. At one time, it was every year, and it might go back to that, it might not. The year that the city of Worcester would not have funding, it would be Wayne County's turn. So there's always going to be opportunities in our region to utilize these, but both Wayne County and that program's managed through their planning department. And I believe we have Pete on the line here, and he can talk more about that. They do a lot more projects than we do, and they cover a lot more territory. But for how that works, when it comes to city infrastructure, it's going to be almost every other year. And so I hope that answers your question. So sorry for the ad nauseum.
No, it works. Thank you, sir.
Jonathan?
Yes, thank you, Stan.
In your needs column, the item more 1 and 2 bedroom apartments,
Yes.
how would one envision CDBG participating in creating more 1 and 2 bedroom apartments?
So with that, from a CDBG standpoint, probably looking more to support the public infrastructure that would surround a project like that. So if we are talking either to support, like let's say, additional affordable housing, or say if there's a public housing project, there's going to typically be infrastructure costs required to support that. And I think that's where CDBG would play the most applicable role for that. If it becomes a project where it is purely serving low to moderate income individuals beyond a typical public housing project, we could always petition the state through their Targets of Opportunity program to see if we could leverage some additional funds to help aid a construction project. That would be possibly $300,000 toward, like, let's say, a $6 or $7 million apartment building that would be going up and dedicated for that cause. That's something that HUD is generally very permissive of. At the state of Ohio, we do have to reach out to our field representatives and Ohio Development Services Agency to make sure that they're comfortable with that and that fits into their program metrics, which are sometimes a little different from the federal. And so in that case, you have both state and federal needs that kind of need to be met when you're working with CDBG at the level that we are.
Thank you.
Welcome. Sam, would you say that is still an aspiration, though, that we want to keep on the list for this year?
Most certainly.
Okay. All right, then. So that being said, would anyone have anything else to add to this? Are there specific areas in downtown or in our community in general that we should be looking at.
Jonathan, would burying above ground utility wires qualify for something like this, or is that a little too attenuated for the low to moderate income?
I'm going to write it down just so we have it. The answer to that is we do have to show a support for the low to moderate income individuals. However, that could also relate to making an area safer. And so sometimes with above ground wires, you have different obstacles that you put into the urban landscape. People have to walk around, especially if they're in intersections. We did utilize $600,000 of CDBG funds to install new pedestrian crosswalks and signals in downtown. And that's money that would have had to have come out of the pockets of our Worcester residents directly, but this did allow us to do that. And part of that is trying to place poles in a place where they're going to be less obtrusive to walking. So I think it's valid, and part of streetscape fitting into that realm, helping to improve slum and blight. There would certainly be projects where that would be applicable. So if you're all right with that, I'd like to leave that on.
The last time we looked at putting power underground, it's about $1 million a mile.
Yes.
Just for cost right there.
Wow.
It is pricey.
Why so cheap, Roger?
You'd have to ask the power company that question. I'm just saying, I mean, I don't think you can get $1 million from CDBG to do that for a mile.
And I'd have to concur with Roger that it's unlikely that we'd be able to have that, but there could be projects in the future where, especially as we try to continue to expand streetscape, where it might make sense to get some wires underground. And since it is so cost prohibitive, if we are running it like even a half block underground, CDBG could be a match to that project. And as far as prevailing wage goes, the city, everything that we do is prevailing wage, so it doesn't really impact how it affects our projects. So that would be a nice little injection to have. If we could secure $300,000 or $600,000 is probably what we would want to get half a block. But that could be an integral part.
But the rest of the money would have to come from capital, so
yes.
That would have to go to the administration.
Correct.
And it's the same capital fund that paves all the roads too.
Yes, and with any project, so we'd probably be in the situation where we're looking at a block-long expansion of streetscape, and to bury a power line might mean that at the end of the day, we could utilize some CDBG, but we might have to do a little bit less of that project. And I guess that's going to be the trade-off. What would work better? And so that's why for each of these, there's always a little bit of a plan that goes along with it when we're providing an application, whether it's a private business or it's a public infrastructure project. We need to include a budget and show what is actually being produced for the public with this. How many miles of X, Y, Z. So that's just something to keep in mind. So it is difficult, but definitely for beautification, it has a point. So I see we have the fine folks here at WEDC. Tom or Miranda, would either of you and Justin, feel free to chime in, but we've had in the past talked about just making ourselves aware that these opportunities could be available for business. Certainly going into the future, we think it'd be good to keep that on the list as well. Do you have any additional thoughts on that?
No, I'm just kind of jumping in here and just learning the process, what you're going through. So I like a lot of the things that are on here. This all pertains to economic development, and it all helps the quality of life and the growth of the community. So you got some good things on here. Once again, the things that I think that interest me the most is housing related. keeping that at the top of our mind as we continue to grow the community. So I think you're hitting on a lot of good things here.
And likewise, Jonathan, I think your list is it's well done. The only thing I would make a comment on is when you put in like a repaving opportunities, as you look at scoring these, if there's opportunities to fund those types of projects just through the city's general fund, I would definitely make sure that is lower on the list in comparison to coming up with, unique ways to support Stan's group and bringing on more 1 and 2 bedroom apartments where, there's really no funds to support that effort. But overall, I think your list is good and nicely done.
Now, I'll keep a note here in our records too, that that's something that we certainly want to do is prioritize, unique projects that don't have other sources of funding or opportunity for funding. And that's one of the things too that we're trying to take the approach that we are for this coming application with the Salvation Army. I don't specifically have them on this list, so we'll just, and part of it is it's the familiarity that we've kind of relied on being able to have these services in town, but especially with the medical. So I want to make a point that we keep that on medical care for underinsured LMI. And then in this case, supportive services. And that this does kind of go along with what we talked about before with housing, but supportive services specifically for our homeless residents. And this is where, we can talk a bit about the Salvation Army proposal. And then on that, so going forward for this year at the moment, what we have on our plate is a request for $150,000, the maximum that we can apply for services here. That would go again $100K to get to help Salvation Army to launch their new day center program in downtown. And they have a 3-year plan. This will provide a nice injection for the first 2 years. And we have a lot of people which most of the folks on this call understand, we have a lot of wonderful, amazing organizations that are all contributing significantly to make this happen between our Wayne County government, the Wayne County Community Foundation, the support from the Wayne County Housing Coalition. That's all been instrumental here. So and that's an example. We have a unique opportunity to fund public services just because of the COVID-19 situation, and we don't typically have that available to us, and so we want to take advantage of it. If anyone incidentally has comments that they'd like to submit for the record for our public hearing, you're welcome to send me an email. Housing Coalition already gave us one, and we're very appreciative. But we can pass that along with our application as well. And we've been coordinating with the state. We feel optimistic on that one. There will be opportunities for critical infrastructure projects as they come up. Right now, the requirements for that program makes it a little difficult for us to identify specific needs right at this moment for an application in this window, but we can a lot of times those are emergency type situations, and so as that's needed, we can jump in and apply for that. But certainly something to keep in mind as we look at all of these. So, anything else to add, or any final comments here?
Jonathan, this is Leslie from Community Action.
Hey, Leslie.
So you know what I'm going to bring up? Transportation project.
Yep. Perfect.
So 2 things I was wondering is, would there be any funding in there that would allow for getting people to work either from Worcester, Worcester to Worcester or Worcester to elsewhere, but also getting people from elsewhere into Worcester to go to work? Because we've started our rural mobility solutions, work transportation, and we're doing a lot of Worcester people, but and we're bringing some folks in from Orville, some in from Apple Creek, and from Burbank. So we're getting them in here, but we're also getting requests from people who live in Worcester to go elsewhere for work, either to Orville or possibly to Shreve. So that's
Okay.
And then the other question is, would there be any transportation funding to kind of provide, whether it's setting up bus stops or providing transportation, especially from those low to moderate income neighborhoods and possibly those new 1 and 2 bedroom apartment areas, and even like out at Seacrest Village, which is just a scotch bit outside the city limits,
Mm-hmm.
so the transit can't go there. You know, so there's a way, if there's any way that we can link these poorer neighborhoods to transportation.
Just going to make a couple adjustments to our bus shelter comment from before, and making sure we make a note here for funding for rural mobility. The CDBG program is limited here, but HUD does have some other transit-oriented block grants that are available, and that's something that we can take a deeper look into. The short answer is that from a public service standpoint, I would imagine we could have some possible opportunities with the allocation program if that were something that could be made available for services more often. We kind of take a look at public transit. It takes a lot of investment from the city, but at the same time, so does repaving a road. And a lot of people rely on that. And we've, thanks to Community Action, we Medina's help, we've watched that program, the city's Taxi Pass program, just balloon in the amount of usage. And the majority of that is work travel, people traveling to work. And so I certainly echo, Leslie, what you say with being able to make those work connections even further out to other areas. That benefits our businesses, that benefits our residents. So certainly something that we want to take a look into. On the infrastructure side of it, allocation could be another opportunity as well, along with neighborhood revitalization. And it's interesting, like when you bring up, especially going south of our city, we do have by OSU, it is a little difficult in that area to get a safe walking connection to our community. And that's one of the things we talked about before with OSU connectivity. That's kind of what we mean by that. But how do we connect to the several apartment complexes that are up there? And so neighborhood revitalization could be an opportunity as well. And we'll continue to look into that. And I can reach out to you here offline a little later to see if there might be a possibility for some additional infrastructure in those areas, especially if we have a specific neighborhood that might need significant infrastructure. I think that there could be an opportunity there worth looking at.
Okay, thanks.
All right, then.
Jonathan, real quick.
Yes,
Krista.
please. Thank you.
Thank you for adding the supportive services for homeless residents there, specifically for the Salvation Army. Thank you very much for that. The only other thought I had was we do have the Worcester Homeless Task Force that's working closely with Housing Coalition right now, looking at that idea of additional overnight shelter, no barrier overnight shelter for especially our homeless population that we see on the streets right now.
Okay.
So that's early planning stages, but maybe just throw that on there as another thought to keep in mind.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and what this helps us with is when we do have an announcement for grant funding, it gives us the ability to move forward on seeking funds faster. Additionally, too, there is the CARES Act that will be coming out. We're not entirely sure how that's going to translate yet into CDBG funding availability for communities like ours, but we do understand it'll be service oriented. So we're keeping our eyes on that as well for developments, and something like this, something like Viola Startzman and the homeless task force, those are projects that I think that the state is looking to help provide support for going into the future here over the next year. So we'll definitely keep everybody posted on that as well. So, all right then. Well, if there are no further comments, what I will do is from our conversation, we'll flesh out the rest of this community needs worksheet. I'll just forward along to everybody a copy of the minutes from today. But if you have anything else to add, please feel free to reach out to me. We'll get that on our list as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to give this list to the state of Ohio. And we're telling them this is our implementation strategy. These are all of our needs. And at some point, we're going to be asking you for support, for help on these projects. We won't be able to do all of them because they're going to tell us they won't give us the money for all of them. And we're certainly going to be looking at investing our other resources as well. But it is something that we can get to the state, get on their radar, and as we can solidify details on specific projects, we'll be that much more ready to go. So thank you so much for all of your time today. I really appreciate it. I know it's time out of your day, but thank you very much for all the help in helping us to pull this together.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.